The title of my article is 7 Strategies to Teach Text Comprehension. This article is great because it gives 7 practical ways for teachers to teach how to comprehend text better. It's also not the only 7 ways, but it is a great place to start. So the first way the article describes is monitoring comprehension. Students that are monitoring their comprehension are reading as they go and they're thinking, do I understand this, or is this a part I don't understand? And so these students, this is when they are thinking about and self-evaluating whether or not they understand, and then they see what, where, and when they need to apply a new strategy. The second way is metacognition. Metacognition means thinking about thinking. And so this is where our students are going to identify the places that are difficult, and they're going to figure out, this is what I need to do when I get to another difficult area like this one in the future. The next way is graphic and semantic organizers. These are used to illustrate different concepts and the relationships between concepts. So a lot of teachers use study guides as they're reading. They use diagrams like a Venn diagram so they can compare and contrast. They use graphs and charts, all sorts of things that are visual for students to see. This is how these concepts are related. And this is a great way to show students visually what's going on in the story. Okay, number 4 is answering questions, and this is, I think, one of the key elements to comprehension. And a lot of this is going to fall back on the teacher's part. When you're asking students to answer questions, this gives a student a purpose for the reading. So some students that might not really like what you're reading, if they don't find the text really enjoyable to themselves, if you give them questions and a purpose for why they're reading it, they're going to read it. And they're going to read it enough to answer the questions, so they're going to be comprehending. So that's why it helps them find a purpose. It also helps them focus on what you want them to learn. And so that's when it falls back on the teacher, is the types of questions you ask is what the students are going to be looking for and what they're going to see as important. And so the types of questions we ask, we can't just ask questions of that recall information. You have to be able to ask questions that are going to deepen their comprehension of the text. So it can't just be, who did this, what happened next, and those type of questions. It needs to be things that are going to deepen the level of comprehension for these students. One strategy that this article talked about is the question-answer relationship strategy, and we're actually going to talk about that at the end. We're going to apply that strategy using a story. And number 5 is generating questions. You can tell if a student understands the text if they are able to generate their own questions. If they're reading and they realize, I don't really understand this, or I'm predicting that this might be what's going to happen next. Whatever the question might be, students that can read and then have questions at the end, it's clear that they were comprehending and trying to comprehend as they went along reading the text. Number 6 is recognizing story structure. This is going to be where students are comprehending the characters, the setting, the plot, the problem, and the resolution. And those are all just a few examples of what the structure of a story is. So students that are able to read a story or a text and then at the end identify all of those, it's going to prove that they were reading enough to know that these are the characters. These are the characters that didn't get along, and this is what shows that they didn't get along in the story, an example of that. And the very last one is summarizing, and I think this is one of the most important ways to tell if your students really comprehended the text. The students have to identify and generate main ideas. They have to connect different main ideas together. They have to rule out information that isn't important, and they have to remember everything that they've read. Students that can do all 4 of those things really shows that they really comprehended. If they can summarize it, it proves that they know all the important details, they know what needs to be left out, and they know the main idea of what they just read. So like I said, these are just 7 ways that this author thought it was important. But there are so many comprehension strategies that we can use with our students. So we're going to practice the question-answer relationship strategy right now, and ideally you can use this with any book, but because we don't have time to read a chapter book right now, we're going to use it using the story of the Very Hungry Caterpillar. And so I'm assuming most of you have read this story before, but just as a refresher, it's about a caterpillar who he's hatched as an egg, and then he gets really hungry, and it shows his progression of everything that he eats, and then he gets really, really bad stomach ache, and then he goes into a cocoon and turns into a butterfly at the very end of the story. So we're gonna kind of talk about and look through the text for just a few minutes and see what kind of questions you might get asked with this story to make it more meaningful to your students. So the first part of the question answer strategy, relationship strategy, is the right there question. These are questions that the student can look in the text and they can know exactly, they can read straight from the text exactly what the answer is. So an example of one of these questions might be, how many kinds of foods did the caterpillar eat? So we can look in our text and we can flip to this page and it's going to show us exactly, and the students can count exactly how many fruits and vegetables and types of food that the caterpillar ate. Okay, and so that's an example of a right there question. The next type of question is a think and search question. These are questions where they have to recall facts from the story, but they're going to have to dig and search in the story a little bit more than just flipping to the page and finding the answer. And so one of these questions might be, why did the caterpillar eat so much food? And so they're going to see all this food that the caterpillar has eaten, and they're going to have to flip all the way through the book to find that he ate all the food because he was changing, and his little caterpillar body was changing, and he was about to become something completely different. And so he needed to eat because he was going to be in his cocoon for such a long time. But you would have to search all the way through the story to find that out. The next type of question is author and you. This is going to require more of a prior knowledge along with the text. So an example of this question would be, have you ever eaten so much food like the caterpillar that you got sick? And so it refers to the story, but it refers a lot on the student's prior knowledge, and so that would be an example. And our very last question is called an on your own question. And these questions refer to maybe themes of the story, but these are going to be more of a prior knowledge question and something that extends knowledge and comprehension of the story. And so an example of this type of question would be, if you were forced to be somebody else, who would you be and why? So it's taking the theme of the caterpillar changing into a butterfly and giving it to the student and saying, if you were in the caterpillar position and you had to change into something new, what would you change into? So these are just 4 types of questions that can change the comprehension of a story. I really enjoyed this article and I would encourage you to go read it. It's great.